All right, local recording
Ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. My name is Rotten Deadite. With me today are...
we didn't do an order.
Didn't do an order,
so I'm going to
do it.
say it's me.
It's
Felix,
Felix.
known as Banu Hanamasashi. Who's next?
I'm Zells, otherwise known as Zells.
And I am James, also known as Aramithius.
Hooray,
Have
we
this
saved
stuff
it.
down.
Yes.
No.
And,
This is a totally normal Saturday.
Totally normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to congratulate everybody who's made it through the whole trip. We're finally here. It's the 36th lesson of Vivek. This is the end of the road. I don't know. We'll probably be able to manage this one in one. But in one cast. But then after this, we're going to be doing Sermon 0 and Sermon 37, which whatever order we like, and then I think we're probably going to try dig as hard as we can into the Truth and Sequence, because it's been out longer than Douglas Goodall's big fucking drop that he did on the internet, which we have to look at because it's dank. Halfway through. No, not halfway through. Jesus Christ. But I mean, this is what it's like in Elder Scrolls lore, man. You never run out of stuff. Every time we were just talking about this before before we started casting. Every time you think you've reached the bottom, they move the goalposts on you, and you have to do more stuff.
And then the more you think about it,
cut to Helldivers.
Oh
God,
hey.
that Helldivers lore is great. Are you kidding? It's terrific. The Helldivers dank lore is really good. What?
I'm unfamiliar with Helldivers.
Yeah, it's really good.
I know nothing as well.
It's good fun. It's a good game.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I've been playing a lot of Pacific Drive though. So that's turned out to be really good. And I keep trying to play Death Stranding because you can't get any danker than Death Stranding, but well, yeah, the lore is Starship Troopers or Terminator. It's one or the other. And there's a third race they haven't even done yet, which is going to be terrific. So Sermon 36. We just covered Sermon 34 and 35, in which Vivek reveals to the Hortator that Nerevar is destined to be straight up murdered by Vivek. It takes a little bit of, getting used to that idea, I would assume, but Vivek doesn't give us any time for Nerevar to let that sink in, because we're straight into 35, where Vivek talks about what defines clearly what Vivek's love, and as Vivek would lead us to believe, the term love in general means. Although Vivek has been quoted as saying before, I don't pretend to know what love is for everyone, so maybe love is different for everybody, and that's kind of what Aleister Crowley would lead us to believe, that love looks differently for everyone because God's will is different for everyone, which is real fucking convenient. Makes it hard to write laws and start a culture, but I don't think that was what we were worried about. Anyway, so Sermon 36.
Probably not what Crowley was worried about either.
I don't think so. I think he was worried about getting fucking people.
Yeah.
So for these were the days of Resdania, when Khymer and Dwemer lived under the wise and benevolent rule of the Almsevi and their champion, the Hortator. So this is the opening that we get for a lot of for almost all of the sermons that start in Resdania and aren't directly related to lessons. Yes, 36 has the foul murder hidden message, which we will get to.
Although it's a change in the formula, because it's these were the days of Resdania, but
then it says,
involve... Yeah, and then it says...
though the Dwemer had become foolish and challenged their masters, which is the new update. This is previously on the 36 lessons, and now we've got, the big twist here, which is that the Dwemer have become foolish, according to Vivek, and challenged their masters. Wait, the Dwemer have masters now? I thought Resdania was I thought it was a democracy, man. It's managed democracy. So, or that Helldivers lore.
The Dwemer are a minority within a democracy.
Yeah,
which is
actually an interesting question. Do you think the Dwemer were outnumbered by body by the Khymer?
They were outnumbered by the Chimeri Electoral College.
I can't imagine they would be, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I legit am not sure if the Dwemer were any more limited in number than the Chimer were.
Because the Chimer are nomads, so they're a splinter group that's traveled across the whole continent and presumably lost people along the way.
Yeah.
Now they've been established on the island for a while, been in the Deshaun and Stonefalls area, but are they? The Dwemer have been there forever.
Aha. But a couple of counterpoints
Okay.
to the Dwemer and the idea and nomads and whatnot. We see the Dwemer ruins and how extensive or non-extensive they are. There's only a certain number of those. And we could also say that when a people, as we're seeing in the West right now, when a culture becomes sufficiently advanced and people don't have to rely too much on future progeny to survive numerous cataclysms, then people tend to have less children. Don't we even have like some kind of lore anecdote that the Dwemer barely procreated or something like that? Meanwhile, it's also assumed that the Dwemer are just like not the Dwemer, the Chimer are getting busy like 24/7. So there's part of me that says, yeah, they might have been outnumbered by the Dwemer at first, but very quickly supplanted them in the island of Vardenfell, just in Resdania and what would become Morrowind in general, because we see, of course, like they eventually set up the various strongholds you can find in game. You have all the different towns and settlements that start being set up, including in the time of the rise of the tribunal. So that's still like a significantly long time to allow for a culture to grow and develop and flourish. So I think that those two things are worth, like those two concepts rather, are worth taking into consideration.
Although, as Yagni is sort of mentioning in chat, it's not really democracy. Even if it is any form of democracy whatsoever, it's not democracy as we understand it. It's sort of those who have seats on the Grand Council, or the First Council, as it would have been. That you have one seat per house, and you have some texts talking about House Dwemer. I don't think it's the case that the Rorken clan had one seat and Kagranak's clan had one seat or whatever. It's just the case of you've got House Telvanni, House Drez, House Redoran, House Indoril, House Halalu, and then you have and House Dagoth, and then you have House Dwemer. So Dwemer have one vote in the first council of 7. So I don't think population necessarily enters into it.
No, and I think that's also perfectly valid. So we can have 3 things that we can use to sort of choose our headcanon choose our respective headcanons appropriately. There was something else though that I want to say about Dwemer, Vivek, and stuff, and I had it, and then I lost it, and then I had it again, and then I lost it again. So hopefully it comes back, because there was like a good little bit that was relevant to what we were saying. So if I suddenly interrupt somebody, that's what it is, because I remembered what it was.
I have to. Well, I was going to say, excuse me. IFW pointed out in chat that they had been settled in Morrowind for longer than the Chimer had.
Yeah.
But I would also argue that the Chimer have a culture of. I don't have any actual evidence, just a gut feeling that the Dwemer do not have the same sort of inclination to procreate as the Dunmer do, or the Chimer. So I can completely believe that that culturally the Dwemer were almost sort of like, this trend that we're getting in Japan now, where people are sort of like looking at sex as something gross, and like young people in Japan are increasingly having like non-sexual relationships and just not into it,
or
the exchanging of fluids,
like the 4B movement in Korea.
The
the 4B movement in Korea.
They're just putting on helmets like in what's it called, in that Sylvester Stallone movie. Anyway.
Oh, Demolition Man.
Yeah, the hunka chunka.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah.
So, Shinzo Abe. So, it's also worth noting that at this point, since we consider this to be the War of the First Council, that means that Resdania has only lasted from First Era 416 to First Era 668.
Now I
according to my
remembered. Now
notes.
I remembered. Okay.
Oh.
The thing about democracy and like how it's not really democracy.
No.
It's like Athens and the Delian League. So
Yeah.
Athens is like, hey, we're super good and smart, and we have like democracy, and it's really good. And the rest of the Delian League is like, cool. So can we have that? And Athens is like, ooh, yeah, I don't know about that. I feel like I still need to be sort of the one in charge for reasons, and you just have to trust me as the city state of Athens. So I think that's how we could also kind of view that in terms of how like old traditional semi-democratic councils kind of work. So there we go. Sorry about that, but finally I remembered. So there we go. We're done.
Yeah.
Well, I got the impression that the Delian League was a bit more about just a military alliance of whoever Athens could bully into being its buddies on the playground, but that was just me. Anyway,
it was that, but it was also economic because of the naval aspect. So yeah.
IFW is also pointing out that the Dwemer didn't recognize he was either Dibella or Mara. I don't remember from these and the other known worlds thing. I don't remember which one they didn't recognize, but that might be somewhat revealing. Anyway, the point that I'm getting at is that I think the Dwemer probably just didn't bone a lot.
I feel the same way.
And so anyway,
yeah, that's fair.
So, but the Dwemer had become foolish and challenged their masters. This, I do kind of think that, like, I don't know what Resdanian politics was like at the time, but I think it's a fairly safe bet that, considering the fact that the council didn't really last more than about 200 years and some change, the way elves are thought to work, there probably wasn't a whole lot of like Dwemer activity in the council. I strongly suspect that the Dwemer wanted representation on the council because they wanted representation, and then once they had it, they were just sort of like, I don't really give a fuck. Yeah. That's the way I feel about it. I also feel like the Dwemer being the Dwemer, they could have just not voted on a whole bunch of things, and then suddenly when it came down to like, agricultural zoning, they showed up with a fucking force and voted hardcore about something that didn't make any sense at all, and the Chimer representatives is just like
so like I don't disagree because again we have so little information
about the Dwemer,
but for me I feel like the Dwemer, how they've always been written and thought of within the Elder Scrolls universe, and now again we have to rely on the unreliable narrator in this regard, as like take it with a heaping grain of salt everything you're seeing and hearing about these people, because they aren't around to defend themselves anymore, except for Yagrum Bagarn, who even then has a very limited kind of like what you can pull from him. So that being said, it definitely kind of feels like the sort of alliance of convenience. They both weren't really on the best of terms, but they both recognized that stinky Northmen probably not a good fit.
Nord's bad.
For
everything
their,
else,
respective goals and hanging around their territory. So it's like, hey, look, we hate each other, but we hate him more.
Yeah.
So truce, but then when that's over, oh, it's absolutely coming to fisticuffs again.
Yeah.
And so for me, I always kind of thought that the Dwemer on the council just to kind of like keep an eye on things and make sure that they weren't completely blindsided by stuff. And also probably just to be like, okay, so are they aware that our boy Kagranak is working on them dope tools?
Yeah.
No? Good. All right. And then one day it's like, oh, they are aware? Shit. Okay. All right. Shit got serious now. Like that's kind of how I understood it. It's the alliance of pure convenience. It's like the Soviets being part of the Allied powers. It's like we still fundamentally don't like each other, but you're at least cool with like killing Nazis. So
yeah, and so are
we
we
for now. Like,
and the Americans are actively like before the war's even over, they're actively trying to figure out how to fuck the Russians over, and the Russians know it, and it's because they're doing the same thing.
And like there's Churchill with Operation Unthinkable of like,
hey,
what if we just detonate a bunch of nukes to create our own kind of Iron Curtain of radiation? And it's just like, Okay, we are so glad you are not in power anymore.
Well, so in my opinion, Resdania is one of the most interesting sort of hotspots of history in old school Elder Scrolls lore. It's the Battle of the Four Banners or whatever is also rife with like politic, but there's just so much that it's harder for me to get my head around. And whereas Resdania, on the other hand, I could kind of understand like the enigmatic and obtuse Dwemer versus the Chimer, who are just, comparatively speaking, just starting their culture. Or they had Ashlander culture for a long time, but now suddenly they've got tribunal culture and these gods from fucking nowhere, and so they've got to figure that out. They've got to make that like paradigm shift from we are all better off in tribes alone, like just choking on ash and suffering, to House Lalu. You know, it's like a huge jump, and so
I do feel obliged to point out that house culture did exist before the tribunal.
That's right. It did. Yeah. But Hlalu didn't, did it?
Not as much. They were were present, but they weren't the preeminent house for quite
the great
a long
houses time. Now that we think of as the great houses were the ones that immediately bent knee to the new tribunal,
and the rest of them
lost their houses.
Yeah, Mora, for example, didn't make it.
Gave everything supposedly to the tribunal and became their
official house
guards, and all of the temple grounds are formal Induril houses.
Yeah, and it's the early Roman occupation of. Oh, interesting. So but it's something that I can kind of understand, and sort of my fondness for the West Wing, I think, starts to show through, and I start thinking about like you know what it would have been like to actually sit in on like the council in Resdania, and you know, and watch everybody eyeball House Dwemer on one side of the big, you know, a circular room, you know, big hollowed out crab that everybody's having conversation in. Anyway, out of their fortresses they came with golden ballistae that walked, and mighty atrodox, and things that spat flame, and things that made killing songs. So okay,
that's beautiful.
Let's unpack that a bit. So Dwemer fortresses, everybody's already familiar with those. You get involved with them pretty heavily in Morrowind, and also a bit in Skyrim. And they guns confirmed. Yes, honey. Yes, guns in Elder Scrolls. Yes, okay.
No.
But these are ballistae, and you all should know what a ballista is. It's good, but these say that their ballistae walked.
Well, they did.
Yeah.
I would also like to point out that canonically cannons do exist for red guards, so
yes.
And I agree with chat that the killing songs is just such an amazing description of the tonal.
We assume it's tonal architecture, some variation of it, and the idea that you can sing people to death is I haven't felt like that kind of energy since 90s pop music.
Reading that description, though, it kind of puts me in mind of the way that the historians talked about the Byzantines and Greek fire. This kind of oh hell, what's going on here? This terrifying weapon that no one has any equivalent of, and just doesn't know how to deal with. I mean, it's kind of brushed under the rug a bit here because Vivek wants to paint the Dwemer as being a little bit useless. But I can imagine that if we actually had an accurate account of the Dwemer war machine, it would involve something like the way that the histories talk about Greek fire. It's the thing of things that spat flame is sort of vague enough and close enough to that. I was just thinking,
Like,
don't they walk in Skyrim the ballista? Do they? Hold on. No, there's no walking ballistae in Skyrim. There's a ballistae you could shoot.
There's the rolling spheres have
the dwarven ballista. Dwarven ballista are in Dragonborn. Yes, you're 100% correct. They do. Yes, I'd forgotten completely about these things. I don't know why. Yes.
Because maybe Dawnguard wasn't super great.
Oh, it was in
and
Dragonborn,
memorable?
apparently, not Dawnguard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I kind of love that whole idea though.
Speaking out of Dawnguard.
Speaking of okay, what I will say about Dawnguard is I liked the castle. The armor was cool, but the armor I felt was like that just screams high rock armor to me. And Chris is just looking at me like,
You mean boring?
yeah, kind of. And then, or
Well,
just like generic European fantasy.
they are
and-
sort of close to the border with High Rock up there, so.
Well, so no, because like the Dawnguard Fortress is out by Riften, isn't it?
Oh no, sorry, yeah. No,
yeah,
I was sorry. I was thinking the vampire castle is close to High Rock.
Volkihar, yeah.
Volkihar, that's the
This is so sad. Here we are, a bunch of lore nerds, and you're talking about a major storyline, and your main lead is the castle was cool.
Well, I'm not done. I also like the snow elf floor. That was kind of neat. And being able to explore like the glittering glade or whatever, but it has such an unmemorable name. So unfortunately, yeah, it's like.
But it had those really cool animals in it that had been like drinking the water or something, and they were all like
I did have
phosphorescent.
fun with it, but at the same time, it's not like I'm like you know what I need to do. I need to go back and play my favorite DLC. Meanwhile, it's me and like you know what is Shivering Isles as incredible and insane as I remember? And then I play it, I'm like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, very fun.
Wait, the little dude that guards the Dawnguard castle is the same guy that voiced Darkwing Duck?
Oh,
wow.
I heard about this. Yeah.
Wow.
As in, I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the gum that sticks to the bottom of your shoe.
Oh my god, I'm never gonna think of that the same way.
Wow.
Yeah. What can I say, y'all? Voice actors are amazing. But yeah, so like I do have some good things to say about Dawnguard, but like I just said them all.
There's a little decrepit human guy you have to talk to get the gate open, and it's the same guy who did Darkwing Duck. Wow.
Oh, okay. But no, but to Zel's point about we're lore nerds and the big leaders, we like the castle. But yeah, we've known enough about the series that we have opinions on it, and opinions it can be improved is a valid opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not
Could they be
disagreeing
better?
with you for a second.
Let's see. Vampires are despicable. Yeah. So, Atronox, of course, and then killing songs are things that made killing songs. Now, this is not. Are we talking about machines that spit out killing songs, or like animunculi, or are we talking about musical instruments that the Dwemer played? Maybe.
Oh,
both are pretty bitchin'. Now that I think about it.
Okay, so I've thought about this. My thought was that because the heart of Lorcan is the Doom Drum, that kind of forms the sort of baseline rhythm for like they would have a bunch of like Dwemer like steam pipes, almost like an organ that would tie into the actual organ that is the beating heart of Lorcan. And by like changing the tones of that, because Lorcan says, he's the one who can say that I am not. That is what allows for the killing songs to exist and work. And that's also for me why in my head canon, that's also why you see all the big sixth house bells, because they're trying to recreate the tones that they heard at the Battle of Red Mountain. And they're trying to recreate that for their own purposes and for like, lulling people into dreams. Like that's like my super dope as fuck headcanon. So
yeah, because you have the Dwemer bells and the not the Dwemer bells, the sixth house bells, and there is that line in I think it's in the Dagoth-Ur's plans document that talks about how Dagoth-Ur is trying to quote recapitulate the sin of the Dwemer. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some imitation, at least, even if it's just something like a cargo cult of what the Dwemer were doing in House Dagoth's aesthetic and method.
Yeah. I also liked how in the game you could actually like hit the bells, and like if you knew your scales, you could play songs.
Yep. I asked Michael what the quest was behind that, if he could remember what it was, and he said he's been trying, but he could never remember what the plan was for those bells. But whatever it was, they must have planned it out enough to at least build that functionality in. But I guess they never quite. God, I would have loved to have found out. Even if it was just like you summon a boss or something. That still, that'd be great.
So we kidnapped Todd Howard and we forced him to explain it to
Todd
us.
Howard don't remember. I guarantee you, he does not remember.
Was that in Skyrim? You should buy it.
Well, get ready because we're about to fall down the fucking iceberg here. Their king was Dumak Dwarf Orc, but their high priest was Kagernak the Blighter. Okay.
Yeah, here we go, ladies and gentlemen, and variations thereof.
Who wants to talk about Dumak as a dwarf orc?
So, okay, I can touch on this because I know some people who really love the idea that the Dwemer were actually just like a lost clan of Orsimer. Which honestly, I could see tracking. I don't agree with it, but I see where they're coming from.
IFW is losing his mind in chat right now.
of course he is. Why wouldn't he?
We need to invoke the spirit of Tuvok or whoever he was in Reddit. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
Oh yeah, I don't remember.
We've seen Dwemer. I agree.
The other option is that dwarf orc could be like there's two aspects to the dwarf orc for the following thing that I'm about to say. One is that he was actually half orc, hence the name dwarf orc.
Right.
Or it was again because the Dwemer can't defend themselves anymore because they don't exist. It was applied by Vivek and other leaders to
demonize, I guess.
Yeah, like demonize, and also to make it seem like the association with orcs being lesser than, stupid, brutish. This allows to be like he was a stupid, brutish king who led his people to downfall. That's all you really need to know about him, and that's why the orc could be attached. So those are kind of like the total of 3 reasons, I guess you could sort of understand why he's got the name. Which of those you choose to believe, kind of up to you, because we don't really know one way or the other.
Yeah, and I personally think that it's just a way of describing Dumak as a, pardon the pun, a piece of shit. Of just sort of insulting him, Dwarf orc could be a compliment saying he's as strong as an orc. That's a good point. Yeah.
Also possible.
If it also feels like the Dunmer as Chimer, excuse me, you have basically you're spoiled for choice when it comes to things that Chimer hate. So they either hate the Nords for obvious reasons, they hate the Orcs because of Trinimac, or they hate the Dwemer for reasons that we are currently covering. So when they describe an enemy, they could describe them as being like half Nord or something because they think they're big and brutish and stupid, or like to invade things or whatever. Orcs, they would. I think that Chimer would use the term orc to describe something that follows a lie, that perpetuates a lie, that is or a racial enemy of some kind, like an enemy of all Chimer, not just people who were there when we were being invaded, but like any Chimer. If you follow the Boethia in any way, which you should as a Chimer, then the orc, creation myth, the followers of Trinimac are therefore your enemy. I think it's easier to think of things that Chimer and Dunmer don't hate. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, I personally love that meme where it shows like Morrowind highlighted and it's got like the color to it. All the rest of Tamriel is just gray. And over Morrowind, it says great and beautiful Morrowind. Yeah. And then over each province is just like a different kind of Inwa, except for like Argonia, which is just slaves, and then Elsewhere, which is fluffy slaves.
Yeah.
But then Valenwood is like, forest Inwas.
Yeah.
Somerset Isle is like, golden Inwas, or like annoying Inwas, and like the Cyrodiil military Inwas, and like the The Bretons are like, crafty magic in WoD, like just like variations thereof, and it was just beautiful. Showed a deep understanding of the cultural variety across Tamriel.
So then we have, but we also have their high priest Kagrenak the Blighter. If I recall correctly, the Blight had shown up before Sermon 36. I think it's mentioned.
I forget.
Do a quick search on that because sometimes called First Blighter, Chemua, one of the Nord kings, could give clouds stomachaches and turn the rain of Beloth into bile. So, and then you get "It is not a blight, it is my house" in Sermon 15 when the Sharmat is speaking. So the idea of blight feels like a blight is just something that darkens the skies of Resdane in that sense.
Could be
something like that.
Or we could literally be talking about Corpus, the blight itself.
Yeah, but why is
the disease?
But I thought that was
doesn't that come later?
Yes,
yeah, I thought that was because of the House Dagoth.
Right, except that I strongly suspect that the 36 lessons were written for readers who were growing up around the Blight. I think that it is, as a document, or as a political document, I should say, it is attempting to politicize things in terms that modern, air quotes, modern readers, in other words, end of Third Era readers, can understand. I don't. I think therefore I why. I think that
cereal.
I think that the go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's a really neat idea. The kind of imposition of modern terms back into everything, which also happens within oral cultures, just as an aside. I mean, which is also has interesting implications for the words of Clan Mother and Nisi, if you ever want to think about it in those terms. But particularly how ESO treats the Khajiit. But you have the first blighter, the one that's sort of highlighted as one of the most important, being Chemua, who I don't think we hear about anywhere else.
Yeah,
it was some sort of Nord warlord that the Kai'Ma faced during the initial Nord invasions that isn't memorialized in the culture anywhere else, which is a bit weird if you're trying to establish Blighter as a big thing. And unless you do some serious revisionism and mix Dragonborn into the sermons and say that and say something Mirak was Chemua, but
there's a thought. I don't like it, but I mean I don't want to deal with it is what I mean, but it's a thought. So under mountains and over them, the war with the Dwemer was raged, and then came the northern men to help Kagrenak, and they brought Ysmir again, because he can't fucking stay out of his own fucking whatever. So the idea that the Nords showed
Chris,
up...
tell us how you really feel.
The idea that the Nords showed up at the same time to help the Dwemer is an interesting idea, but I don't think there's any record of it in Nordic lore at all.
The 5 songs of King Wolfar.
It was mentioned in it? They brought Ysmir, connects to the Song of Ash King Wolfar when the North summons Shor, and Shor summons Wolfarth's ghost. Jesus fuck.
Yes. Yeah. The only races that are not present in some form at the Battle of Red Mountain are the Bretons and Cyrodiil.
And Altmer.
Okay. Oh, sorry. And Altmer and Argonians. Okay. Yep. Okay.
And the
Red gods were there.
Okay. My memory sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep your revisionism out of my
sermon.
Oh wait.
That this is PR.
Yeah, exactly. It is PR.
He really does. Like the whole thing before about the Dwemer challenging their master. Seriously doubt that at any point anybody expressed that to the Dwemer that way.
Yeah, right.
But, in retrospect, Vivek absolutely is going to tell his people that that's how it was set up.
Yeah, IFW, the Argonians probably were there. The question is, did they want to be?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how the Dwemer would have gotten in contact with the Nords. And there's no note on how long this war lasts, if I recall correctly.
Aren't the
At
dwarves
least
all
1
over
year,
Skyrim
668.
now at that time?
Hmm?
The Nords are all over. The dwarves are all over Skyrim at that time, though, right? So wouldn't they
Yes.
have contact with the
Oh, that's
dwarves
true.
or
Yeah,
with the
they could
Nords
have.
if they wanted it?
Yeah, they could have. Yeah, they
Not
could have coordinated in that respect.
Vardenfell,
Mhm.
but yeah.
Mhm. Very good point.
Cat's talking to us in
Oh
chat.
wait, put your cat back on. Owain, put your cat back on. So let's see. So of course, Ysmir's then they're shouting shit up a whole lot. If Ysmir's there, then is Chimua also there?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be. Although, hang on a second. But Chimua was defeated by Vivek
Oh, that's
earlier
true.
in
Yeah.
sermons. So.
The way that the 5 songs of King Wolfheart tell, there's a 3-way war: the Chimera on one side, the Dormer on the other, and the Nord-Orc alliance as a third. Orcs again.
Which is very weird because.
Then why call him Dumak Dwarf Orc?
Right.
Yeah.
Did the Dwemer solicit that? Well, no. Okay, but according to the 5 songs of King Wolfheart, then they were fighting amongst themselves as well. Dwemer March, yeah.
The Chimera just like show up to the battlefield. There's already a battle raging. Like Nords are fighting Nords, Orcs are fighting Orcs. The Dwemer are just fighting whoever's in front of them. The Chimera sorry, is this right? Do we just like
Do we have the
stab
right
whoever?
place?
Like
Did
what's
you get
going
the
on here?
invitation wrong again? Are we at the wrong war?
Should we wait for them? Should we wait for them to finish, or I don't know.
But no, the reason that I say that, I was thinking that everyone was involved is I'm just remembering a forum post from MK saying that he was trying to get the idea that the Battle of Red Mountain was and the dragon break that was enclosed therein was something that sort of left a collective cultural wound in memory across most of Tamriel. I remember him saying explicitly that Cyrodiils were not included in there, and they really should have been. Just to kind of make that sort of cultural memory a bit more universal.
So leading the armies of the Chimber was a slave that would not perish. We've heard that before. I am the slave that will not perish. I'm of the slaves that will not perish, something like that. The Horsator Nerevar, who had traded his axe for the Ethos knife. Where'd he put the axe? Why did we never get the axe? All right. So the Ethos knife is one of Vivek's creations that he used to kill Cityface?
Yes.
Yes.
One of them. One of her children. And so apparently this is like I think I suggested back then that this was a metaphor for something, the Ethos knife. I can't remember what I landed on. But he slew Dumak, the dwarf orc, at Red Mountain and saw the Heartbone for the first time. So this is, of course, the Heart of Lorkhan.
But just thinking about the Ethos knife for a second, an ethos is a way of doing things, a practice. And so the reason that Cityface was taken down with it is that the ways of the people changed to make Cityface irrelevant. And I think that is what's going on here, that Vivek is saying the ways of the Chimera / Dunmer are so superior to the Dwemer that the way we do things is better, and therefore the Dwemer died because their ways were terrible. Their ethos, their thought patterns, or whatever, were inferior.
UESP suggests that the Ethos knife is the Keening?
Keening, yeah.
I'm not suggesting that it isn't. But the Keening and Sunder both have different metaphorical roles in the way that they affect the Heart of Lorkhan. So,
and they're also Kagranak's tools. So that kind of calls the question:
did Kagranak build the Keening out of the Ethos knife? Where did he get it? Why is it not? Why is it being used here against them? Like it, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot of questions.
I'm very not crazy about the Ethos knife being Keening. I don't think that. I think that's an assumption that's based purely on the logic of they're both knives, and it's not any deeper than that. I don't dig that. Now, the keening could be an ethos knife. If you can imagine more than one, you could think of it that way. And I to get into that, I mean, we can get into that if you want, but the way that Sunder and keening are used on the Heart of Lorkhan has to do with what happens when what purpose the Heart of Lorkhan has in terms of Lorkhan itself, which is if you consider the heart to be like, you know, the soul sort of Lorkhan, then the soul of Lorkhan is rebellion and trickery and the desire for truth but the inability to tell it, you know. And so when you hit Sunder with when you hit the Heart of Lorkhan with Sunder, what you're doing is you're making it throb. You're hitting it like you would a drum. It's the hammer that you hit a drum with, and so it makes a sound, which is effectively the you could think of it as like the longing or the desire of Lorkhan for the things that Lorkhan wants. Keening is then used to tune the heart of the sound that the Heart of Lorkhan makes. So it's used to alter that emotion or emotions in a way that then creates the reality that the Dunmer wanted. So they are using Lorkhan's connection to the world, connection to the to Mundus. In other words, if you follow the Oblivion explanation, the sort of reality that Lorkhan created, to alter that reality in very fundamental ways, very, very important ways, that you couldn't normally do with regular tonal architecture.
Although I think the names got mixed up, if you ask me, from that way of doing things, because to sunder is to split apart,
right?
Which is what keening does with the sound, for starters. And going into them and keening, a keening is, or to keen, is a mournful wail.
Right.
So it's the idea of a thing that keening should be producing a sound, but it doesn't. It's manipulating one. So I don't know why. I don't know whether the names have any bearing on that.
It doesn't help any that keening looks a lot like a tuning fork.
Yeah.
Which is on purpose, apparently. So mixing the two of them up may have been on purpose. It might have been something to obfuscate or sort of mystify people in that respect. But and it also, the other problem I have with it is that the keening being a tuning fork would mean that you would have to strike keening, which you can't do. So then maybe keening interacts with the noise coming out of Lorkhan, and then you tune it some way, but that's not what a tuning fork does. That's not how tuning forks work. That's not how any of this works. So if anything, you'd be striking keening with Sunder, and then that would create a noise. But all right, whatever.
I was sort of having an image there for a second of Sunder being the thing that tempers keening, the way that you fit, and you as in you lay keening on the heart of
on the heart,
and
then hit keening with it.
And you thwack keening with it in the way that you change the blade on an anvil.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Why is it a heart bone?
Well, it's a bone in the respect that there are the gift limbs of the Aedra, the earth bone, the fundamental supports of reality of the corpus of Mundus,
of the laws of nature, and the heart of Lorkhan is an embodiment of mortality in some way, shape, or form. At least a mythical representation of it.
A key part of reality, and the fact that it disappears at the end of Morrowind does not mean that it's gone. It means that it's just taken on another form, or it's gone somewhere else.
It's been free.
The heart of Lorkhan is the heart of the world, for one cannot exist without the other.
I do feel obliged to point out that there was a line of dialogue in Legends that said it had been destroyed. So there is some muddying of the waters there. But it is a piece of in-character dialogue.
It may have been destroyed in the respect that it no longer appears in Mundus, but the idea of it is certainly still around, and I think that you could probably easily write some quest or plot or something that brings it back into reality. I don't think that's a stretch.
Yeah, I think it has to exist somewhere because,
Yeah.
again, that line.
One exists to satisfy the other.
Yeah, one cannot exist without the other. So
my theory, which I kind of expand upon in my own coda, which people can read if they want, is that after the heart was freed, it finds its way to the Numidium, allowing for its ultimate return for landfall. That's my personal headcanon. But also on the subject of like Sunder and Keening, like as we were talking about it, like, you got to strike the hammer. A vision came into mind of just the big like bell tower dude in Andor who, like, with the two hammers and then
Yeah.
ding ding.
That
So
dude
I
was
was just
dope.
imagining him with like Sunder and King of like for the Heart of Lorcan, like, all right, time to change reality. Dung dung. All right. Yeah. Change of reality. Like that just popped into my head.
Yeah.
And no more men. Oh yeah. Like
Yeah, and Yagni brings up a thing in chat. Wasn't there something about the Dwemer tampering with the heart to make the concept physical, and the heart disappearing in Morrowind, representing it returning to its original form? Yes, Yagni. That the Dwemer did something to change the nature of the heart.
Yeah.
To do something to it, and you look at the plans to defeat Dagoth. They very explicitly say destroy the Dwemer enchantments set on the heart. They don't say destroy the heart.
Yeah. So it could be the enchantment. The enchantments have brought the. I'm parroting your accent. They could say that the enchantments have brought the heart into being, into a physical form.
Yeah.
Before that, maybe before they enchanted it that way, maybe it just sort of appeared as like some kind of weird pulsing Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl effect, of like, just a shadow of something.
Well,
shadow
I mean,
of
like
flame.
I said, it kind of, that's part of what was the inspiration for me, and the idea of the Numidium is allowed to return for landfall because the heart was freed, because originally the Dwemer were building Numidium and were going to use the heart to power it, but that means that they had to put the enchantments on it, and so that's where I kind of made that connection.
And I'm not sure if the heart was supposed to become Numidium, if it was supposed to enter Numidium, or if they were just going to use it to charge Numidium up.
That's
like,
unclear.
Like I would like to think, because of the way the Mantella worked, that it was supposed to in some way be inside of the brass god, and that kind of works for me in terms of what Numidium represents, in terms of like a metaphor,
Yeah, that's certainly the way that Akula Khan was being constructed as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So
Gaze
let's see.
upon the heart and Akula Khan.
And men of brass destroyed the 11 gates of the Morning Hold, and behind them came the Dwemeri architects of tone. So you get a little bit of that in the Tribunal expansion. They talk about the attack on Mournhold. And there are still Dwemeri constructs left over, I think, that are scrapping it out in the in Sothisil, the city.
Yes, you find those ones that have crossbow bolts mounted on them as well.
Yeah.
So you again have more ideas about mobile ballistae in the stuff we find in Tribunal.
Am threw down her cloak and became the face-snaked queen of the 3-in-1. Those that looked upon her were overcome by the meanings of stars.
I love those lines.
So the face-snaked queen kind of sounds Medusa-ish. But remember, that is face-snaked, not snake-faced. Or snaked face. But rather face-snaked, and I'm still not sure what the fuck that means.
I've thought about this at length, actually. My thought is that it's her mask that you see her wearing at the end of the Tribunal expansion. It's
sort
her,
of Medusa-ish.
Yeah, sort of Medusa-ish. But it also reminds me of several masks, or like a style of mask you can see in cultures ranging from Tibet to South India to like Indonesia, that whole sort of core area around the Bay of Bengal. And that usually, like a lot of the masks for that are attributed to demons or to the Naga, who were a snake type of people that were servants of the gods. At least I think, if my memory holds up correctly. I could be very off base about the Naga.
Well,
And
that certainly chimes with some of the rough pop culture Naga, if you like.
right. But that's also why, like, and I forget the exact significance, but there is a reason why in many depictions of Shiva, he has a king cobra that's like draped around him with its hood extended. There's some reason for, like, he guards the like Shiva's throne or something like that, or he is his throne. It's a complicated thing that I'm not well versed in, I'm afraid. Um, but that being said, um, that in terms of like the idea of the serpent, the dragon, time, stars, Magna Gi, creation, um, there's a lot that like one can infer with that, whether it's for the Dwemer, for Almalexia, for who are they? They made the stars big and important to them. The not the Kathringi. Oh, the previous indigenous
Aliens?
the Needies, or the
The
Nede, however you
Needs,
pronounce
yeah.
it.
Oh, the
The
Needs.
Needs. There's lots of, I've heard so many different pronunciations.
Yeah.
I don't even know anymore. So sure, we'll settle on the Needs.
The Nedev.
The Nede, yeah. And like how also apparently the Red Guards borrowed some of that from them. Like we see the Red Guards use their own stars to like plot out victory and whatnot. So I think that like that being face snaked, as in like taking on an aspect of the
Of
serpent,
snakes.
aka Lorcan. Like I think that
Yeah.
very much works in Almalexia's favor, and that's the mask that we see her wear in the
I agree.
ultimate fight.
It's a face that has had snakes happen to it. Face snaked. Yeah.
Yes, and with the importance of snakes within the Elder Scrolls universe, not just like within our real world as well.
Yeah.
And otherwise, she'd be Irish.
Yeah. I also want to to bring up a point that that Lake Otis one is making in chat, that this is symmetry between Sermon 36 and Sermon 1.
Right.
That
and we're gonna get it again for Sothasil next. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And she becomes the the face snaked queen in Sermon 36, but she already is that in Sermon 1.
Yeah.
Which I kind of want to mention the Ouroboros here because
Oh, you should. Yeah.
Yeah, because the snake that eats itself, etc.
Yeah.
So is this the end or is this the beginning? It's kind of a question. Is one of the thoughts there, that because she becomes the face snake queen in this one, but is the face snake queen at the start? Is this the start before the start at the end of it all?
Well, but what's also interesting is that these people who look upon her were overcome by the meanings of stars, but not the messages of stars.
Huh.
All right.
Interesting.
Which is what it is in Sermon 1. But then under the sea, Set stirred and brought the army he had been working on in the castles of glass and coral. So this is his. For some reason, the castles of glass and coral, the previously occupied by the dregs, are now suddenly clockwork dregs, mockeries of the Drumeri war machines. Drew, excuse me. God, I do that so much.
The Drew
rose up from the seas and took their counterparts back beneath, where they were swallowed forever by the sea. That's just, it's just good tactics. It's just a good idea.
What, you don't have a massive army of weird sea creatures? Come on, man. It's like you're not even the ocean, man.
Yeah.
It's also interesting though, because this sort of thing implies that the war has kind of engulfed everywhere, because it's reached the Morning Hold. So they've made landfall into mainland Morrowind, and they're already doing things to be thrown into the sea. So, yeah, they've gone right the way through Vardenfell. This has gone hugely into the rest of Morrowind. Depending on which accounts you read the Battle of Red Mountain, otherwise, the Battle of Red Mountain is sometimes the first and only battle of the war. On some accounts, the use of Ashlander scouts allows allows Nerevar to outflank the Dwemer,
right,
and therefore contain it all. This is a much, much more cosmic existential threat to the Chimer than other examples of this particular battle.
Yeah, Juvena's in chat is also onto something here about the blue star, the Nemoli, only appeared during a dragon break, which is apparently happening at this time.
Mm-hmm.
The meaning of the blue star in particular is an affirmation of their divinity. The Almsvi gained their godhood at the red moment. In other words, during the betrayal of Nerevar. Then the appearance of this star is a confirmation of that.
Yeah, it's like you are literally fighting against gods.
Yeah. Well, they're becoming them at the moment. That's what the star means.
Which is still terrifying. Of like, oh, you know what? I don't feel like fighting God today. No,
I don't. I have better things to do. Yeah.
I would like to live and survive. Thank you.
Not the battle I signed up for.
So Red Mountain exploded, and the Hortator went too far inside, seeking the Sharmat. Oh, as the Hortator went too far inside. Well, it tends to happen when the Hortator hits you deep. Wink. All right. So you can check off penis jokes on your bingo cards.
Do we even have that on the bingo card?
So he goes inside Red Mountain, seeking the Sharmat, which is interesting because the Hortator has been spoiling for a fight with the Sharmat in the entirety of the 36 lessons. The Sharmat did not exist at that point. The Sharmat only happened sometime after the Red Moment, after Alandro Sul? No. What's his name?
What? After the witnessing shield thing is Alandro Sul, yes.
Yes. After he dies and Vorin Dagoth becomes Dagoth-Ur.
Yes.
That takes a while. It takes a minute. It didn't just happen immediately. So it's another sort of timey-wimey thing that's happening here.
However, this is revisionist history.
However, I would go along with the ideas of the blighter and such with this, that a title that's being applied to various things.
That's how I thought of it.
Are we looking at Sharmat as a cultural devil figure to the Chimer Dunmer, and therefore he was going in potentially seeking Kagranak, who is the biggest blighter of the lot?
Okay, but if that's the case, then the Sharmat in Sermon, whatever it is, 16 or whatever, or 11, would be Dwemer, and it's very obviously Dagoth-Ur. And to make matters worse, if the Sharmat here did in fact refer to Kagranak, for example, then it should have probably been, he should have been labeled as a Sharmat, because that's just bad writing otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think that this is another one of those timey-wimey things that makes you question again something that we'll get to at the end of this, but all right. Dwemeri High Priest Kagranak then revealed that which he had built. Okay, so that kind of backs up the idea that the Hortator is looking for Dwemeri High Priest Kagranak, is that if we're then kind of thinking of he's gone in to seek the Sharmat and he's found Kagranak.
Yeah.
If that's or this could be something that's happening elsewhere, but Dwemeri High Priest Kagranak then revealed that which he had built in the image of Vivek. Of course. It was a walking star which burnt the armies of the Triune and destroyed the heartland of Veloth, creating the Inner Sea. So here's the idea that Numidium was activated successfully, which we don't really have any evidence of except for when it was activated by Tiber Septim. Thank you. So this creates the Inner Sea, though. The Inner Sea being the So this is apparently the formation of Dagoth-Ur the Mountain.
And so, I
don't know.
Couple things here. That would then also, now that we have to look back at they came across the sea and started invading. So is that the North Coast or the East Coast?
Right.
Was
it everywhere at once?
Because the Inner Sea wasn't there at that point in time.
It doesn't hold up. Wake up, sheeple.
But see, the problem that Vivek's got here is that Nerevar was killed at the heart,
Yeah.
and so he's got to explain the reason why Nerevar is down there,
or banished in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was obviously seeking the Sharmat, and we've foreshadowed, we've seeded the Sharmat before, so that now when Vivek says, "Oh, he was down there seeking the Sharmat," you go, "Oh, sure, you told me about the Sharmat back in chapter whatever." So it tracks, but of course it doesn't.
That makes sense, and I assume that you are not a liar, because why would you lie to me?
Why would you lie to me? Maybe Numidium gets to reinvent its past as well. Numidium doesn't reinvent things. Numidium denies things.
This is actually something that's the kind of the ideas of kind of using the motifs here is something that I've also seen suggested in biblical texts. That it's not a case of, say, Genesis was written first and then Exodus was written, and all the rest of it. That they were produced in sort of a culture that expected you to know the whole deal, and so you read through it, you get introduced to all of the metaphors, all of the imagery at once, and you therefore start tracking when the metaphors are mentioned, and they mean and signify the same thing throughout all the text because it was constructed in that sort of a manner. And so the talk, and that could well be what's happening here, that the idea of, again, it goes to the idea of the Sharmat as a culture hero, and then you've got the things that you have built in the image of Vivek, which you're also expected to know about, that also would have some other context somewhere else. And so it is all supposed to sort of weave together and not necessarily and just sort of make sense because you are assumed to already know all of the rest of the text. You accept the piece because it's part of the whole that you already know, because each jigsaw piece means that you can plug it in together, so to speak. You're always kind of adding in the last jigsaw piece based on the references of all the others.
Kind of like Celtic lore as well, Celtic mythology.
I have a book on that somewhere.
Yeah.
So each of the aspects of the Almsevi then rose up together, combining as one, yes, Voltron style, and showed the world the sixth path. So this is the combination of souls, the sixth walking away. Iam took from the star its fire. She would. Seth took from it its mystery. Yeah. And Vec took from it its feet.
Michael, where are you?
Well, okay. So these are possibly the three things that happened during the foul murder sketch drawing. But obviously, Iam gets his feet. Set gets his face. Which you can kind of draw some connections between that and the idea of mystery. Your identity, by removing Nerevar's face, it then becomes a mystery of who he is. Maybe I'm stretching here on purpose, but so anyway, his feet, which had been constructed before the gift of Molag Bal and destroyed in the manner of truth by a great hammering. So this is the symbolic method of Vivek destroying the idea of Numidium by destroying its feet, that which it stands on, its root, its basis, the thing that it walks on and creates memory, at the thing that it travels through life on, and destroyed it by a great hammering, which is to say the destruction of truth or the changing of truth, as we covered already in previous sermons. And we're kind of looking at the end result right now. It's that Vivek has changed, or attempted to change, the idea of Numidium through the 36 lessons in the same way that Vivek changes the idea of her divinity. James, you have a thought?
Yeah, it was just to link the gift of Molag Bal to the whole idea of Vivek's giant form's feet are taken and made forever harmless to good earth, and so on, which this is emphatically not. It's also more parallels to between Vivek and the Numidium, which to my mind is always going to be Vivek kind of doing a nod and a wink towards her origin.
Yeah.
Or the origin of her divinity within the heart of Lorcan, because they tacitly want to admit it, basically.
Yeah. When the soul of the Dwemer could walk no more, they were removed from this world, which makes sense. If you can't proceed linearly through time, if you can't walk at all through life, then you stopped, and if you stop, you no longer exist.
Also, crucially, if they can't walk, they can't even walk at strange angles, which is how they bypass the cycle and achieve permanence.
Yes. Yeah, they can't walk a walking way. They can't walk the way of the Chimer or the Altmer to extend their lifestyle. Their lifetime, their lifestyle. They extend their their clothes never go out. Everything is hip all the time.
Chris, at one point it sounded like you said waka waka, and now I'm just imagining. Yeah, just
waka waka.
Like someone just trying to do like a weird kind of John Lennon walk, like, waka waka.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
it's a fun space up here sometimes.
I was also going to mention the point of feet being a euphemism, and the idea of if feet are
grab his dick and twist it.
Yeah, feet
twist
are in.
Sorry.
in Hebrew literature, feet are often a euphemism for genitalia. And so the idea of Vivek taking their feet fits more to what Vivek's essence is of sex and murder. That all kind of fits a bit more neatly to my mind.
Yes.
And there's the idea of taking the generative power from the Dwemer is more vital in quite a few cultures, apart from anything else. And so it couldn't walk anymore. It couldn't move. So that puts a different spin on walking. I will admit that if something cannot walk, if feet are genitalia, means it cannot produce children. So the whole genealogy of the Dwemer is wiped out.
Is called to a halt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stops.
Also, worth remembering is the symbolism of feet in Hinduism and also throughout just South Asia and Southeast Asia in general, where feet are usually washed ritually or ceremonially, especially before going into temples. In places like Thailand, it's a sign of respect to touch someone's feet. It's the same in actually many corners of India. So like, seeking blessing for a marriage, the prospective husband will like touch the prospective mother-in-law's feet as a sign of utmost respect and humility before her. I think we even see this hear about it. I think in the Ramayana it is at some point, like Lady Sita touches the feet of like the bad queen mother or something like that, and she like responds very poorly, and it's a sign that Sita is showing respect, but the elder lady is not acknowledging that, and that makes her a bad Hindu. Like there's like a whole layer to it. So like the idea of like feet and washing them, and also that's part of why Kali is depicted with in a lot of cases her foot, and it also depends crucially which foot she puts down, because whether you're going to go down like the left-footed path or the right-footed path, meaning orthodox or unorthodox. And the idea is that comes from a story where she was going on like a mad rage, but her husband, who I believe was Shiva or like a form of Shiva, in order to stop her rage, lies under her so that she steps on him and realizes, oh God, I have just committed a grievous error and sin. And that's also where the tongue sticking out comes from, is that's her embarrassment. That's her embarrassment and shame at putting her like dirty, destructive feet upon her supposedly innocent and divine husband. So it's like a gross cosmic offense. So yeah, feet have lots of significance for a variety of things, not just genitalia. So that's also another contextual layer you can look at and think of in terms of taking the feet away from Numidium.
Yeah, and
or Nerevar, or both,
or both.
Resdania
was no more. Of course not. Killed half of them.
Yep.
It had been redeemed of all the iniquities of the foolish. The Almsivi drew nets from the beginning place and captured the ash of Red Mountain, which they knew was the blight of the Dwemer and that would serve only to infect the whole of the middle world and aid it. Altitude Dunmeri. So
okay, so this is where they build the ghost fence.
yeah, that's I think what they're
and that
trying
just
to
sounds
suggest.
like ghost fence propaganda to me.
Yes.
That it's the big net, and it's keeping it's keeping all the blight out. And what do you mean you're coughing? You're not coughing. You're fine. Do you need to go to the Ministry of Truth?
Sound like this in
Yeah. And so the soul of the Dormer can walk them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. They do the blade of the Dormer. I hate it. So then we end with the beginning of the words as Almsivi. I give you this as Vivek. We switched it up now. It's no longer the ending of the words. It's the beginning of the words. And this is, I think this is Vivek closing out the 36 lessons by saying, this is where your story starts.
Isn't that the worst use of the word Dunmeri?
Could be. In the lessons.
Because they changed after Red Mountain, so
yeah, that's true. Yeah, it could be. Let's see.
The only mention
Yes, it is the only mention of the word Dunmer in the entire lessons. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good catch.
So this is the beginning of the story of the Dunmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The head used to tell the story becomes
we
true.
no longer have to deal with the dwarves. It's a new age, a new era functionally, like for them anyway. You got your new gods, you got your new skin. Don't be afraid of it, by the way. Totally not a curse.
Totally not. Yeah,
just it's fine. It's fine. Just roll with it. I'm blue, dabba dee dabba die dabba dee. So yeah, it's all good. That definitely feels like what they're trying to put across to prospective readers. And definitely the whole like ghost fence propaganda, just oh boy, all right, yeah.
and so
horrible thing.
But I did want to sort of wrap this up by once again going back to the idea of who are the 36 lessons written for. And we've already kind of covered this, but if at the end of the day, when you take especially the ending of the 36 lessons and some of the things that we pointed out in this particular lesson, it doesn't make any sense to me to think of it any other way other than the 36 lessons were written for the Nerevarine, or possibly specifically, again, the metaphysics of Morrowind, the player of Morrowind himself, or themselves. It's really hard for me to look at the 36 lessons any other way than that. So it was kind of my assumption before Elder Scrolls Online did the Morrowind DLC that the 36 lessons only showed up in Morrowind because that was the only place that they were supposed to show up. That's the only time that they were needed, was specifically for the Nerevarine. The fact that all other Dunmer knew about it made sense because it was in the game. Again, metaphysics of Morrowind. So it's a lot of circular thinking, but it worked until it showed up in ESO. Now that it's shown up in ESO, we know that the Dunmer in the universe, in the Elder Scrolls universe, have been laboring under the weight of this giant collection of books for some time, and actively ignoring them, I hope, if they want to have any kind of luck in life. There's one other thing that I do want to talk about. I'm going to kind of throw it to chat because I want everybody to kind of think about this. Kirkbride said that it was his intention to write a book with actual magic in it. And I said I was going to tackle this at the end of all this, and that this is where we're at. What magic do you think he meant? And where is it? I'm not looking for answers right now. But I would like people to really think about that, because I think you're going to have to do a lot of research as to what modern esoteric magic is. And you're going to have to consider how you would place magic into a book. Is it in the form of rituals, actual rituals that work and do things? Is the idea behind magic just the manipulation of faith, as chaos magicians would suggest? That's kind of what, like, I would encourage everybody to think about for a while. That's your homework, if you will.
Yeah. And there is another jumping off point that's sort of similar to this. that you might want to look at and consider. I don't know whether this was written before or after Morrowind. I can't remember the name of it, but it was one of Michael Moorcock's comics that he explicitly said was written as a spell, as some sort of magical working.
Right.
It was one that did deal with magic as part of its subject matter as well, but I can't remember what the name of it is for the life of me.
I do remember reading something about it, but I too do not remember the specifics. Yeah.
Yeah, so that might be a place to jump off.
Juvenis is right. It's time to go to Justin Sledge's YouTube channel and pray that he's got a video on modern esotericism, and he does. So go take a look. I don't know how old it is. His opinion about things changes over time, like it should. So yeah. Are we meant to assume that Nerevar died in the explosion of Red Mountain, according to Vivek? Yeah, if you don't see the foul that's what's implied, is that Nerevar either died in the explosion according to the 36 lessons, or died in one of the three ways that Vivek gives you during the game. I don't know if the 36 lessons were written before that particular piece of plot was written. I would suggest it was before. Or during, and then Kirkbride just wasn't party to that. It was written by somebody who wasn't Kirkbride. I'll tell you that. One of his older vids, among the first, I don't know Bucker. He's got a lot of content. So I would strongly recommend everybody who's interested in this kind of thing kind of dig into what modern magic is. Try to figure out if that's what Kirkbride was talking about. You got a lot of work to but this is one of the most interesting parts about the 36 lessons to me, is figuring out where the magic is. Because it's definitely there, and Kirkbride does not talk about that shit idly. He is very specific about, like, don't fuck with magic, it's real stuff. So, he was not kidding. I don't know what we're going to do at the next one. It's either 0 or 37, so we'll figure it out. We'll decide.
Gonna finish this homework? Are we going to talk about our homework, or how?
We'll talk, but depends on what chat wants to do. If I show up there and chat's just like, oh my god, we just had so much stuff, then terrific. Yeah, and if you're on the Discord, then talk about it in the Discord and give me an idea of what you guys want to talk about. But we'll do either 0 or 37 in 2 weeks from now. And I want to thank everybody for showing up and subbing. AcreX, I didn't get your alert, so I'm sorry if you subbed during the stream and I missed it. I apologize. But thanks for doing it. And can't believe we're done. It's all 36. It's fantastic.
It's been a long
It has been a long. I'm going to do something really dumb. I'm going to go to our YouTube channel.
When did we start this? It was probably years ago.
Yeah, and I'm going to look to see when Sermon...
I started out watching the YouTube posts, and I didn't realize that there was a Twitch version of it. And
it says 1 year ago.
There hasn't been a new one posted for a long time.
That can't be right. God, it's just 50. 1 year ago? Really?
But you post the...
May 14th, 2022. That's when I posted it.
Yeah, you post the YouTubes somewhere else. Okay, so I'm just going to go back and search the Discord and see when Sermon 1 was advertised.
Oh my god, I look so young.
The pandemic had its toll on all of us.
Let's talk about the 36 Lessons of Vivek, one sermon at a time, on the 30th of April 2022.
And then shortly after May. So yeah. So we're coming up on it. It took us a year and...
Almost 2.
8 months.
Almost. Yeah. Yeah. But we haven't done this every other week. There have been interruptions.
I started watching this podcast during lockdown to keep me sane during my job. It did not work.
You came to the wrong podcast, motherfucker.
Yeah,
totally.
I apologize.
You don't read the lessons. You don't study Elder Scrolls lore to become sane. You do it to do the opposite.
Yeah. Oh my god! I found a new kind of sanity.
Amount of,
there you are. There you are.
And dreams and revelations I have had.
So you think that's part of Kirkbride's magic?
Yeah, there you go. Fantastic. Fantastic. We'll see you guys hopefully in 2 weeks, unless something comes up. You know how we do.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, we have lots to upload, and I have to fucking do the New Worldling School stuff as well. So, the work does not end.
So.
Thanks everybody for showing up. Everybody, bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.